boss always seeks to divide us and confuse us. What the union has done is turn that tactic against the boss. And now the bosses are the ones that are confused and scrambling, trying to figure out what's happening next.
Really excited about this interview. Like we said, Luis has been all over all of this stuff about the UAW. He has written in The American Prospect. Got a lot of respect for them. Talking about U.S. auto workers, the contract talks, and Stellantis threatening to move south to the non-union South. He wrote in these times about the clean energy auto economy. He wrote for Labor Notes as the strike was happening, Lots of stuff. And, despite all of that, Luis tells me that he has been able to consistently get between 8 to 10 hours of sleep. Isn't that right, Luis?
Yes, that's absolutely right. That's the reason for all the typos on my tweets. I'm getting, as you can see, here's this bed. I slept so long. I just woke up. Thanks for inviting me, Jacob.
Yeah, thank you for talking to us. And obviously that was a joke. Luis has been on the picket lines at all hours of the nights, and we really appreciate him taking the time to talk to us. And so before, I want to go into some of this background reporting because it's really important to what is happening right now. But before we kind of back up, let's talk about what's happening right now. You've been on picket lines, multiple picket lines. You've been talking to probably at this point dozens of striking workers and workers at plants presumably that have not been striking. What is the general feeling? We've actually already had a couple of callers that have been striking and then one caller that is at a non-struck facility. And everybody so far excited to strike. The fellow who's not in a struck facility right now said that he's anxious about not knowing when he's going to strike, but really excited generally about kind of the way things are going, appreciative of being, stood up for, of being kept in the loop, that kind of stuff. How does the three callers that we've had so far this morning, how does that map onto what you're seeing?
Yeah, no, people are fired up. They're standing up to corporate greed, and the labor movement is standing with them. So it's really exciting. What I'm hearing is that, in the plants that people haven't struck yet, they're taking some creative tactics into consideration, including, not working voluntary overtime, slowing down production in that way. And this is part of the stand-up strategy, right? It unleashes the rank and file to take initiative. It makes negotiations unpredictable. As you know, as a union brother, that, when you go into bargaining, some of these things are really boring. It's a lot. And sometimes people think that all the action happens at the bargaining table. What we're seeing right now is that the action actually happens at these picket lines. It happens at the shop floor level. Right. So we saw already the impact that the stand-up strike has had, that the companies have laid off workers as a counterattack against the union to dampen the morale that you're seeing all over the country. People are excited. Even President Obama, the former deporter in chief, maybe Biden, depending on how he stands, he'll become the union buster in chief. Let's see if he does what's right and stands for the workers. So far, he's saying some good things, but the evidence will be in how he responds to these EV subsidies that he's giving these corporations. So kind of looping back to your point, though, because I am sleep deprived. I think it's an amazing thing that we're seeing. We're seeing class-wide demands in the front pages of newspapers all over the country, even though we're seeing some crank talk about second guessing this strategy. The corporations are not second guessing it. They're responding, and they're responding with a counterattack against the workers. And we need to stand with workers and lift up the demands that they're making, because as Sean Fain has said, they're not only fighting for auto workers, they're fighting for the whole working class.
Absolutely. Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate. And, speaking of the strategy, you said that there's been some cranks that have been second guessing it. And, we've got a couple of clips from some brilliant minds on YouTube, who are, really, I mean, the UAW should be looking on, just searching on YouTube for their next strategist, because these are the brilliant minds, right? But how are workers responding generally to the strategy, you think?
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a good question, right? Because here's the thing. The strategy is intended to throw off the companies, right? Mm-hmm. Make it unpredictable for them. They don't know what plan is going to be struck. The industry mouthpiece, Automotive News, thank you for your labor. They actually misled the companies into thinking the transmission plants were going to be struck, and the companies started stockpiling there. So they were totally unprepared, right, for what the strategy was. But in that level, when you introduce confusion as part of your strategy, in this case, the boss always seeks to divide us and confuse us. What the union has done is it has turned that tactic against the boss. And now the bosses are the ones that are confused and scrambling, trying to figure out what's happening next. In These Times put out a great story confirming that Stellantis had no idea what plants were going to be struck. But on the flip side, workers can also be confused. There can be FOMO. So right, in the history of the UAW, there's no shortage of militancy. During the 2019 GM strike, workers were out there on the picket line. They didn't know why the hell they were out there. Mm-hmm. It's not like now where they have members' demands that are out there and people can talk to you. We're fighting for pensions. We're fighting to eliminate 2 tiers. We're fighting for the whole working class. We're fighting for a shorter work week. There are clear demands that the membership is pushing. That was not the case in 2019. And your listeners can go back to Labor Notes and read some of that coverage where it shows, that confusion and workers feeling like there was nothing else that they could do. And the companies also used the corruption scandal against the union, and that just demoralized everyone, right? So now what we're seeing is that because there's a tradition of striking, there's FOMO. People may want to, we want to do something, we're going to go out. So I was keeping my ear to the ground to see if there were going to be, I don't know, wildcats. Not wildcats, because technically they're working on their expired agreements, but I wanted to see if there was going to be something militant, kind of springing from the rank and file. The union has indicated that, they're not putting any shackles on the membership. The membership is been unleashed, as I said, and that's part of the strategy. So these CEOs better listen and make a deal that meets these members' demands, because who knows what's next. They're talking about eating the rich. I'd be really scared if I was at Ford, at Stellantis, at GM. The pitchforks are coming out.
Absolutely. And that's something else that's worth explaining. Working under an expired contract, does that mean that they now have no protections? They can be fired at will, and they can get demotions and pay cuts and take this all sorts of, they're just totally at the whim of the boss?
I'm not a lawyer, so I don't want to say too much, but I'm gonna give your listeners a scoop, right? So if you're working under an expired agreement, the status quo still remains, right? So for instance, let's say that the company, these voluntary workers continue refusing voluntary overtime, right? And then they say, you know what? We're going to shift you over to mandatory overtime, so you can't refuse it. Well, that would be a violation of the contract, because they can't change, conditions, because they're working under an expired contract, right? So that will be something to look out for. And Labor Notes is going to be trying to follow that story to see if the union files charges if the company attempts to do that, right?
Right.
So they can change, for instance, like ice machines. They can't do any of those things. So workers have a lot of power, right? But the UAW has a webpage, so I would encourage people to go to the Stand Up website and look at, and Benjamin Dichter, who's on the bargaining team, put out a video. So if you guys can cut into that video at some point, and show it, that would be the best way to educate members on it. But I don't want to say more than what I just said about the status quo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just cause is still there.
Right. That's right. And what Dichter said in that video was that, the only thing different about how adjudicating discipline is that they don't have the binding arbitration at this point, but they can still take it, like you said, unfair labor practices to the NLRB. They can strike over disciplinary issues at this point because now there's no strike clause. But like you said, status quo prevails, and you're not an at-will employee still. They have to bargain over changes. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.